Your silence, the hammer that cracks an avoidance walls, revealing the hurt they hide. Big gestures and emotional pleas may look like the way to pull an avoidant back, but they reinforce the avoidant's deepest fear, that love equals entrapment. You've tried sending those long messages, replaying memories, begging them to see how much you care. But here's the brutal truth. Every text, every cry, every remember when only tightens a knot in their chest. To an avoidant, your desperation isn't proof of love. It's proof of danger. It screams, if you get close, you'll lose yourself. And nothing terrifies them more than that. What actually cracks their armor isn't noise. It's silence. Not the bitter, waiting kind. The kind that comes when your life suddenly has no room for obsession. The silence that comes when you stop trying to fix them. When you stop filling the space with your emotions. When you're so busy building something real for yourself that their absence doesn't even leave a dent. Avoidance can smell fakeness from miles away. But when your silence is real, when you've truly moved your energy elsewhere, that's when they feel it. A strange, hollow space where you used to orbit around them. And that void, it shakes them. Because for the first time, they're not the center of your universe. They're wired to expect panic when they pull away. Tears, accusations, long voice notes at 2 a.m. That's the test they give everyone, without even knowing it. So when you respond with calm acceptance, not cold, not angry, just steady, it breaks their brain. You become the one person who doesn't treat their distance like a crisis. You don't beg. You don't guilt trip. You just let them go. And that quiet strength, it haunts them. They lie awake wondering why you're not chasing, why you're not falling apart. That question chips away at their certainty. It whispers, maybe this one's different. Maybe this one won't suffocate me. Avoidants are addicted to chaos. They use it to justify running. Screaming matches, emotional breakdowns, desperate pleas. All of it tells them, see, love is dangerous. They're used to partners who fill every silence with anxiety, with questions, with needs. That chaos gives them an excuse to stay closed. But when their withdrawal doesn't shake your foundation, when you meet their shutdown with silence, not angry silence, but compassionate silence that says, I see your pain, but I won't carry for you. It leaves them stranded with their own hurt. You become the first person who doesn't try to dig them out of their emotional grave. You become the safe harbor in the storm. And safety is a drug they didn't know they were starving for. But nothing hits them harder than watching you grow. They walked away convinced they had you figured out. They made a mental list. Your flaws, your triggers, your too needy moments. They told themselves you weren't enough. So when they see you change, when you start that business, crush those old insecurities, glow with a confidence they've never seen, it shatters their whole narrative. The person they left behind? Gone. The new you? Magnetic, unstoppable, alive. Growth forces them to admit they were wrong, dead wrong. And that realization, it eats them alive. Because now they're haunted by one terrifying thought. What if I walked away right before they became extraordinary? They expected your world to collapse without them. They braced for sad photos, late-night posts hinting at loneliness. That's how they measure their worth, by the wreckage they leave behind. So when they see you laughing louder, traveling farther, saying yes to life in ways you never did with them, it hits like a gut punch. You're not just surviving, you're thriving. And if you're shining this bright without them, maybe they weren't the light in your life. Maybe they were the thing dimming it. And then they start noticing how the world treats you now. They assumed leaving would shrink your circle. But the opposite happens. You're everywhere, tagged in group photos with people they don't know, mentioned in conversations they're not part of. People lean in when you speak. They seek you out. And suddenly, the avoidant is staring at a truth they can't ignore. You weren't the lucky one for having them. They were the lucky one for having you. Social proof becomes their silent nightmare. Every like, every comment, every story of your wins chips away at their ego. If everyone else sees how amazing they are, why didn't I? And that question comes with heavy, suffocating regret. But nothing exposes them more than emotional independence. They pull away believing they're protecting themselves from your needs. They believe the story they created, that they need space because you need too much. But when your silence shows strength, when you stop needing them to be okay, when your world doesn't collapse without their validation, it shatters their defense mechanism. The person who used to need their reassurance no longer exists. Your independence forces them to admit they weren't running from your needs. They were running from their own fear of being needed. And suddenly, they're faced with the truth that maybe they're the one who's afraid of being alone with their feelings. The next blow is the mirror effect. They expect your silence to be temporary. They need to believe that underneath your quiet, you're still desperate for their attention. So when your silence continues not as punishment but as genuine peace, they start seeing themselves reflected in it. They notice how much noise they create to avoid sitting still. They see their own avoidance patterns crystal clear because your silence doesn't give them anywhere to hide. They notice how they text everyone except the people who matter, how they stay busy to avoid feeling empty, how they create distance to avoid admitting they're already lonely. And then the silence becomes their teacher. They believe they were the emotionally controlled one. But when they experience your silence, when they feel the weight of unspoken words, it teaches them what they've been doing to others their whole life. They feel the anxiety of not knowing what you're thinking. They experience the torture of wondering if you still care. They taste the bitter confusion of being shut out. Your silence becomes their education in empathy. They start to understand the pain they've caused every person who ever loved them. But the real hammer blow? When they feel you slipping away, not with drama, but with quiet dignity. Avoidants only move when they sense the door is closing for good. But the moment they feel your energy shift, that deep sense that you found peace even if it doesn't include them, that's when panic sets in. They realize you're not just moving on. You've already arrived somewhere better. And in that moment, you become irreplaceable. Not because you begged, but because you show them what true strength looks like. Walking away with grace, even when your heart still cares. And then the tables turn completely. For years, they called the shots. They decided when to pull back, when to shut down. But now, your healing makes you emotionally unavailable. Not because you're playing games, but because you've moved forward. Your heart isn't closed. It's just no longer on standby for them. When they reach out now, they don't get instant access. They knock, and the door doesn't swing open like before. For the first time, they're the ones feeling uncertain. They're the ones checking their phone. They're trapped inside the very system they built to protect themselves, and it's driving them mad. But the most devastating moment comes when they realize your silence isn't about them at all. Avoidants read meaning into everything because they're always managing distance. But when they grasp that your silence exists independent of them, that you're not quiet to punish them, but simply because you found peace, it breaks something fundamental inside them. The realization that you're not playing anymore, that you're not even on the field, terrifies them more than any confrontation ever could. What ties all of this together is painfully simple. Your silence stops protecting them from themselves. You stop feeding their fear. Every chase, every tear just confirmed what they always believed. That love means losing yourself. But when you chose silence over screaming, growth over groveling, joy over jealousy, you showed them something they didn't think was possible. You showed them that love can feel like freedom. That intimacy can be safe, spacious, and full of air, not chains. And once they feel that, they can't unfeel it. They don't crack because you force them open. They break because for the first time in their life, someone's silence holds space for their pain without trying to fix it. A silence that simply says, your pain is valid and you're safe to feel it. That's the one thing they've needed their entire lives. Their walls, the ones they spent years building, start to crack. Not because you hammered them down, but because you showed them there was never anything to fear on the other side. They don't come back because you convince them. They come back because, for the first time, they felt a connection that didn't ask them to shrink. A love that didn't demand they abandon who they are. A bond that let them breathe, expand, and still be held. And when they realize you were the one offering it all along, that's when the runner becomes the chaser. The irony is almost heartbreaking. The moment they thought they'd finally escaped was the moment they lost the only person who ever gave them real freedom. And that realization, it doesn't whisper, it roars.